Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Sanur Sessions. Let's get stuck into it. First up, let's talk about the news. Those of you who have been around Sanur for a while will know there's actually a book club in Sanur. It's located at the Riviera restaurant down on Jalan Cemara. This is a fantastic opportunity if you love books. For a small deposit of $50,000 per book, you can borrow these paperback books or hardbacks, these books for up to 30 days for free. Then once you return the book, you get your deposit back. And they've got about 3,000 books down there. I'll put a little picture on the screen to show you what it looks like. But in the southern end of town, you can borrow books for free. And it's a great little community service for book lovers. Check it out. And the reason why it's news is because there was some fear that it might close down, but it is still operational. And I really do recommend it to those of you who love books. Just an update on the earthquake situation. We've had a couple of earthquakes over the past, a couple of weeks really. The last one we felt a little bit. Susan didn't feel it at all actually. She was walking between the kitchen and the lounge room and didn't feel it, but I was sitting down and it had a bit of a shake. It was only a bit of a bump. That one was off the coast of Nusa Penida. The previous one we had was nearer to Ubud. They aren't too bad and they're not scary. They're just a little bit unsettling at the moment. If they get any bigger, I guess it's a little bit to worry about. It's just something to be aware of that when you're in Bali, you can be subject to small earthquakes. Bigger ones are very uncommon, so you probably don't need to worry about it too much, but just be aware that if you feel a bit of a rocking and shaking, it's probably just a little bit of a tremor. What's on in Sanur? If you know me, you know that I love the Andaz Hotel. I think it's just so classy. And at the moment, they've got a authentic Korean barbecue dinner happening every Wednesday to Sunday, which should be pretty interesting because I really do rate highly their food. They also have a movie night every Tuesday and Sunday. I don't know if that goes with the Korean theme or not, but they've certainly got the movie night. You can get onto their website and book in for these things. The reason I mention it is because I think for special occasions, the Andaz is just beyond compare. It's really the best in town, in my view. It's just so classy, international standard, very modern and very refined and sleek. I just love it. Now, if you're into Korean food or there's that movie night, I don't know if it's the Korean movies or just a general movie night, I think it's probably worth checking out. Next up, we have pottery classes at the Kaluma restaurant and cafe down on Jalan Danau Tumblingan, halfway up the main road, basically. On Saturday, the 21st of September, between 1 and 5, they've got different pottery classes, different types. You can paint your own pottery, hand building your own pottery, including glazing, and the prices range between 250,000 and 500,000. They're teaming up with Kavala, and Kavala are the pottery shop, which is down on Jalan Danau Porsod in the southern end of town. Hugely popular and a great reputation, that pottery shop. So if you haven't checked it out, you need to check it out. But if you want to try a pottery class this Saturday, it's on down at Kaluma in collaboration with Kavala. On Wednesday, the 25th of September, so a week from now, there is Galungan. Galungan is a festival in Indonesia, or sorry, in Bali, that's celebrated about twice a year, and it's massive. The day before Galungan, you usually have the slaughter of pigs, and the pigs are usually chopped up and made into satay and made into lawar, which is a traditional Balinese spicy coconut salad, really. Sometimes it's got raw blood in it, sometimes it's cooked blood in it. It's a very interesting cultural experience if you're invited over to a local Balinese house to try it out. The whole Galungan celebration usually is marked with those big penjor that you see on the side of the road, those big bamboo poles that loop over, that look like the top of Gunung Agung, and on the end you've got something that hangs down. It's fantastic, and it's a real celebration time for the Balinese people. So if you're in town, have a chat to your local staff, or if you have Balinese friends, and ask them a little bit more about it, because it's pretty interesting in a cultural sense. You're more likely to see ceremonies and that sort of thing around this time of the year as well. So keep an eye out for those because they're usually pretty interesting as well. Let's talk about Indonesia beyond Bali. Today we're taking a trip to Yogyakarta on the theme of going to places which are very easy to get to from Bali and not too weird and adventurous. And Yogyakarta certainly falls into that category. It's only about a 1 hour flight from Bali actually, and it's on the island of Java. Yogyakarta is famous for the Buddhist temple of Borobudur. And you might have seen it on one of those National Geographic type of documentaries, but it's massive and absolutely spectacular and something I think people should see if they're in Indonesia. But aside from Borobudur, the great thing about Yogyakarta is it has a really nice, friendly energy in the city itself. So the city is famous for batik, it's famous for food, and a lot of university students from all around Indonesia go there to study. So you have that youthful vibe in the city as well. The city is still ruled by royalty. So it still has a royal palace. They have a ruling class that's permitted by the government to rule, whereas some other, and that sort of happened at the start of independence within Indonesia. Some of the kings and queens prior to independence weren't allowed to keep their royal status when Indonesia became independent. But Yogyakarta had a special arrangement and they still have that royalty arrangement in place. And you can actually go and visit the royal palace, see a cultural performance there. It's really beautiful. The thing about Yogyakarta is it still has that really thick Javanese culture there. And when you really see that Javanese culture up close, you can see a lot of similarities between it and Balinese culture. And it really reminds you how similar many of the islands are within Indonesia. There's a thread that runs through all of Indonesia which draws them all together, even though culturally there are differences, of course. My first trip outside of Bali in 2006 was to Yogyakarta. I went there on I think a 2 or probably 3 nights, I think it was, on a side trip from Bali. So I went on a trip to Bali, did a bit of a side trip to Yogyakarta where, you know, they've got all the best hotels and everything. So you don't need to be worried about that. They have Western food if you don't want to eat Indonesian food. You can book tours to Borobudur if you want, which is what most people do, see sunrise at Borobudur. You can do little market tours. You can just wander around on your own, catch a becak, one of those pedicabs, have a look at the local art scene there. Batik is quite popular. It's a fantastic place as a stepping off point for your first place outside of Bali, but within Indonesia. The locals there are really friendly. There's a great cafe scene in town and the food is absolutely fantastic. If you delve into local food in Yogyakarta, you'll really enjoy yourself. So if you're looking to dip your toes into Indonesia outside of Bali, check out Yogyakarta. Let's talk about Indonesian food. Today we're going to focus on martabak. I really wanted to focus on martabak because I just recently went to the Sindhu night market and I noticed that there were a lot of foreigners trying out martabak. Now the interesting thing about martabak is there's 2 main types. There's the savoury type and the sweet type. And they're completely different foods. The savoury type is usually a thin layer of dough filled with mince and chopped veggies and then folded over a few times and fried on a flat plate. And it becomes quite crispy. That outer layer becomes crispy and then you have a crispy outer layer with mince and a few veggies in the middle and you just eat it in little chunks. And it's really delicious. So I highly recommend trying that out when you're in Bali or other parts of Indonesia. It's not weird. The other type of martabak in Bali is called terang bulan. And terang bulan in other parts of Indonesia is usually called martabak manis, sometimes called terang bulan as well. Now, it is a totally different type of food. It's a sweet food and it's like a crumpet. So it rises like a crumpet. It's got those little bubbles in it like a crumpet and the bottom layer is like a crumpet as well, where it's quite solid. So what they'll usually do is they'll make this big martabak that's about, I don't know, 3 times the size of a crumpet, and they'll put butter on it like you would a crumpet, but they'll also put sweet things on it. They might put condensed milk on it. They might put chocolate sprinkles. They might put chocolate sauce. They might put, you know, that Biscoff biscuits, and you can get the jam or like a spread now. They'll put Biscoff spread on there, or they'll put a Toblerone on there and melt it in. There's all sorts of stuff they can do with it. Indonesians will often put nuts, chocolate and cheese on it, which is an odd combination, which I don't really like, but it's extremely popular in Indonesia to have that sweet martabak with cheese on there. It's like a craft grated cheese. But I always choose something quite plain, like Nutella, or I like that Biscoff spread one. And it's absolutely delicious. I mean, it's loaded with calories and really unhealthy, but it's just something as a little bit of a treat. One of those sweet Martabucks is fantastic for dessert and something worth trying out. It's not weird. It's like a sweet crumpet. Really, if you get a chance down at the Sindhu night market to try out one of those Martabucks, highly recommend it. Let's talk about the weather. I don't use the weather apps. I just stick my head out the window and look at the sky. And today, once again, is bright and sunny, but the weather is changing. Over the past week, we've probably had rain about 4 times. And prior to this week, it's rarely rained at all. So we really do see the rain starting to creep in now, meaning the wet season is on its way. It's definitely hotter. It's definitely raining a little bit more, but it's still glorious on most days. Yesterday morning when I woke up, it was raining quite heavily. It then stopped, so I went out for a run, and halfway through my run, I got wet because it came down again. And then at about 9 o'clock, it just cleared up for the rest of the day and didn't rain again. It's pretty cool. Let's talk about property. So as some of you may know, I'm looking for property at the moment myself. And during that process, I come across properties which maybe not suitable for me, but I thought I'd show you guys as well, so it gives you an update on what the property market's like in Sanur at the moment, and maybe you could even have a look at one of these places yourself. The first place we're looking at is a place which is west side of the bypass. It's brand new, and it's 170 square metres of land with 105 square metres of building, which is like a small unit, and the land size is quite generous. To be honest, 170 square metres is quite nice. It has a swimming pool, 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, has a garage, has a laundry room. It's a 10-minute walk to the beach. They say 10-minute walk, but I doubt it. From Batur Sari to the beach it's more than 10 minutes, but it's not far. I mean, I live not too far from that area, and I usually use a motorbike, and it probably takes me 5 minutes on a motorbike, maybe 7 minutes. It's not far, but walking to the beach from there is, for most people, not really something they're going to do. You can do it, but most people aren't going to do it. The price is interesting. For 24 years, it's going to cost 2.3 billion rupiah, which is pretty good value in my view. The only problem is that as time goes on, the value of your asset goes down, and by the time it gets to 24 years, it's worth 0. Usually you can negotiate an extension for a fee as well, but you can't rely on that. Now, if you're already 70 years old and you've got a 24-year lease and you are still alive at 94, that could be problematic for you, because you'll be 94 and have no lease left. But if you're not really worried about that sort of scenario, maybe you have your own place you can go back to in your home country as well, it's definitely an option. They'll also do it on a yearly basis with a minimum of 5 years for 185 million, which is still not too bad. I mean, most people can come up with that sort of cash relatively easily if they've already been working throughout their lives and saved a bit of money and maybe heading into retirement. But it's a good indicator of what sort of price you're going to pay for this style and quality of property. Of course, these prices are negotiable. You wouldn't go straight in and pay those prices. You'd negotiate it. The next place we've got is available for rent on a yearly basis for 170 million, which again is a fairly reasonable price. It's west side of the bypass once again. I'm sort of focusing on west side because that's where my eyes are drawn to anyway. That's probably where I will get property, because I get a larger piece of land. And for me, that's more important than being within walking distance of the beach, because I have wheels. If you've got wheels, it doesn't really matter if you're a 5-minute ride from the beach. This place is 100 square metres of land, which is quite small, but the building size is 132 square metres, which means it's a 2-storey building. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1 guest bathroom. I don't know what that means. I thought the guest bathroom would be in the guest bedroom, but I don't know. You have a pool, a garage, and it is furnished. It does have a bit of an odd design with this staircase you can see here, but most people are going to be extremely comfortable in a building this size, and especially if you're happy to get on a motorbike and get into Sanur that way. This is a perfect place for those who want to get something on a yearly basis in Sanur. So what we're getting a picture of here is how much things cost in Sanur at the moment. Prices are elevated from what they were 12 months ago, and certainly a lot more elevated than they were just after COVID. But that's pretty normal. There are a lot of people trying to move to Sanur at the moment. I'm getting that feeling that people are starting to gravitate here for a more permanent living arrangement, or even a semi-permanent living arrangement. I spoke to a guy called Paul this morning from Crescent Head. G'day, Paul. He comes here 3 months of the year and lives here, and then goes back home to see the grandkids and look after the farm and that sort of stuff. And I'm finding that that is a pretty common arrangement at the moment, where people are doing a sort of semi-living in Bali arrangement. And as time goes on, they might spend more than 3 months. They might do 4, or they might do 2 sessions of 3 months. And when you get into that sort of time frame, you might be looking at something, accommodation which is a little bit more permanent, a little bit more familiar, and perhaps renting a place for a year might be a better option. So if you're in that boat, just keep looking at these property updates I'll do on a semi-regular basis as I put out these new Sanur sessions. And even trawl the forums yourself. You know, some of these Sanur community forums, I'll have people advertising on there as well. One thing I would be advising you against is rushing into anything. Always get legal advice. Always seek advice from a solicitor who you can trust. Don't just go and sign documents and pay money, because it's an absolute minefield out there when it comes to scams and property in Bali. I would also recommend negotiating quite hard as well. Never pay the upfront price. It's sometimes double what you should pay. It's sometimes only 25% more than what you should pay. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff advertised at the moment which are just absolutely crazy prices. They're putting a price up there just to see if they can get it. My assumption is that some people are coming in and just paying these high prices without really knowing what they're doing. Don't do that. Don't do that. You'll be wasting your money. So, number one, get legal advice from the experts, not from me. I can't advise you on anything. Number two, negotiate really hard and be very careful. It's like the Wild West out there at the moment. And as I said last time in my previous Sanur Sessions video, a big plug for Bali Moves. They're a very good and reputable estate agent in Sanur. I've used them before. They cut through a lot of those dodgy agents that you might see in Facebook forums. I don't know if you pay any more or less through them, but I certainly do trust them. You should check them out if you're in town. Let's get on to Q&A. Neil asked, what is Susan's favourite food? Now, I've met Neil before. I met him, I think it was earlier this year. Top guy. Thanks, Neil, for the question. And Susan's favourite meal is yumien, which is a dish which is specific to the West Java city of Bandung, which is where I lived for quite a while. Yumien is a Chinese Indonesian food. It's noodles. Interesting thing about yumien, it is quite a simple dish. Usually you have the noodles, which are dry, so they're not in a soup. They have toppings on them. You might have little chopped spring onions on there, little bits of chicken, or you could even have pork on there. You'll usually have the noodles mixed through a garlic oil and seasoned with a bit of salt and pepper. And you'll usually have a clear broth on the side, which sometimes might have some wontons in it. Sometimes it's just on its own. Sometimes it's bland. Sometimes it's super flavorful. Depends on the place that you go to. That's Susan's favourite dish, and I really like it too. You can get similar types of things to that in Sanur. And my favourite is actually bakmi dua-dua on Jalan Danau Poso. Now that is a fantastic noodle dish topped with pork belly, and I really love that one. So if you're looking for a noodle dish that's sort of similar to yumien Bandung, try bakmi dua-dua. Highly recommend it. Fantastic food. One of my favourite noodle dishes actually that I've had in Bali. One question I get asked a lot, and I haven't created a full video on it yet, and I probably should. The question I get asked a lot is, how do I get from the airport to Sanur? And of course, there's a range of different options, from negotiating with the driver directly, getting your hotel to organise a pickup for you, using the Grab app, going to the Grab counter, going to the taxi counter, walking out the front and looking for a cab, catching the public bus, which I've just done a video on, which you might want to check out. Oh, I think it gets published later this week. So I've just done a video on it. So when it gets published, check that one out as well. But the way I do it is different from all of those. The way I actually do it is to use the Klook app. Now, Klook is an app that you can get on your phone, which around the world they usually use for activities. So if you're going on holiday somewhere, you get onto the Klook app and you can book an activity. In Bali, you might book a car and a driver, or a trip to Nusa Penida, or a trip to Nusa Lembongan, or a diving trip. But they also have a transport booking option from the airport in Bali to Sanur. And I've done it before. It only costs $15 for that transfer. It's so cheap and it's really reliable. I've used it quite a few times now. And the way it works is you book it on the app, and what happens is it sends you a receipt, or like a booking code that you might get through booking.com or Agoda when you're booking a hotel. It gives you a little receipt like that. When you get off the plane and you come out and there's all those guys out the front holding signs and all that sort of stuff, just to your right, there's actually a big counter with a big Klook sign, a massive big counter. And you just go to that counter and show them your receipt and say, hey, I've got a booking. And they say, oh, just take a seat. And within 5 minutes, they've called the driver who's sitting out in the car park to come and get you, take you to the car, and to drop you off directly to your hotel. So it's like a private transfer service booked through an app, and it's extremely reliable, fast. You don't get stung with any extra fees. There's no negotiating with drivers and this sort of stuff, and you don't have to pay extra for toll or extra for parking. It's all prepaid, and it's so good and so simple. I just can't recommend it enough. Now, the app can be used for other things like day trips as well, which I haven't tried yet, but I'm told it's a very good way of trying things out in Bali as well. I've actually got a code you can use for Klook where you get like a 3% discount if you spend more than $50. So I'm going to put it up on the screen now, that promo code. So when you do make a booking on Klook, just whack in that promo code and you'll get a discount. Highly recommend it. It's a good little app to have a look at when you're coming to Bali. That wraps up today's Sanur Sessions. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all things Sanur. I'll catch you next time.